Hey friends, how's it going? In this video, I'm going to recap from 2025 titled The Woman in Cabin 10. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The film opens with Laura, an award-winning journalist working for The Guardian. She arrives at the office to a round of praise from her co-workers, who congratulate her on her latest exposé uncovering corruption inside an NGO. As Laura settles in, she checks her email and finds an exclusive invitation from the Lindstad Foundation. Moments later, her editor, Rowan, calls her into her office. In a quiet, concerned tone, Rowan asks how Laura is holding up. After a brief pause, Laura admits the truth. The informant in the NGO investigation was drowned. Rowan takes this in and suggests Laura take some time off, but Laura refuses. Instead, she shows Rowan the invitation she just received. She explains that Anne Lyngstad, a wealthy Norwegian shipping heiress battling stage 4 leukemia, and her husband Richard are hosting a 3-day yacht voyage for board members, ending with a fundraising gala in Norway held in Anne's honor. Laura has been invited to cover the trip. Rowan remains skeptical, but Laura insists this assignment could be exactly what she needs, a change of pace before diving back into work. The next day, Laura boards the yacht, Aurora Borealis. Before stepping inside, a steward named Carla politely asks her to remove her shoes. Once on board, Laura meets Adam Sutherland, a wealthy socialite attending the trip. Carla then begins assigning cabins. Laura is placed in cabin 8, while Dr. Robert is assigned to cabin 2. As they introduce themselves, Laura learns that Robert is Anne's personal doctor. Not long after, Laura is caught off guard when she notices her ex, Ben, already on the yacht, photographing the very event she's been sent to cover. The two once worked closely together. Ben tries to start a conversation, but Laura keeps things brief and maintains her distance. A little later, the stewards guide the guests toward their cabins. Along the way, Adam introduces Laura to Heidi, who runs an art museum in Mayfair. He casually remarks that Laura will be keeping an eye on everyone. Heidi takes it in stride and responds with a knowing smile, calling her Richie's Juro. Moments later, Heidi's husband, Thomas, joins them. About an hour later, Laura settles into her cabin as the yacht begins its journey toward Norway. As the boat pulls away, a burnt cigarette stub rolls in from a nearby balcony. Laura notices it and quietly tosses it into the trash. That evening, Richard gathers the guests and thanks the board members and friends for attending. He expresses his appreciation for their generous donations, explaining that the funds will help those who cannot afford private medical treatment. He admits that the travel has been hard on Anne's health, but reassures everyone that they will meet her the following day. Before wrapping up, Richard announces a surprise. Danny, a popular musician, has been invited to make their stay more special. He spots Laura in the crowd and thanks her for coming. She acknowledges him with a nod as he moves on to assist Danny while he boards the yacht. As night falls, Laura finishes getting ready for the party while chatting with Rowan. Just as she's about to leave her cabin, she notices Richard in the hallway and quickly ducks into the nearest room, cabin 10. Inside, she's startled to find a blonde woman already there and immediately apologizes for barging in. At the party, Laura feels slightly out of place. She's dressed more formally than most of the guests and nervously apologizes, but Heidi reassures her that she looks fine. Even Ben offers a compliment, helping her relax. As dinner continues, Sigrid, the head of security, approaches Laura with a message. Mrs. Lyngstad would like to speak with her after the meal. Once dinner ends, Sigrid escorts Laura to a quiet library and asks her to wait. Moments later, Anne enters the room. Laura thanks her for the invitation, and Anne warmly says she's glad to have her there. She explains that she's followed Laura's work closely and personally invited her because of her ability to give a voice to those who are usually unheard. Partway through their conversation, Anne is suddenly overcome by a violent coughing fit. Concerned, Laura asks if she's all right. Anne admits she recently stopped taking her medication, saying she didn't want to depend on it anymore. Anne then asks for Laura's opinion on a speech she's written for the upcoming gala, confessing that her mind isn't as sharp as it once was. After reading it, Laura quietly asks if Anne truly plans to give all her money away. Anne replies that she's simply returning what was taken over the years, and that the foundation will soon be handed over to people far wiser and kinder than she and Richard ever were. Laura is impressed by her honesty. Anne adds that she'd like to continue refining the speech the next day, and Laura agrees. As Laura heads downstairs, she runs into Ben stepping out of his cabin. With a teasing tone, she asks if he's working late. Ben says no, then casually adds that he could be if she wants. Laura brushes it off, telling him she doesn't make the same mistake twice. After a brief pause, she adds that he was a good mistake. Ben takes the moment to apologize, admitting he didn't handle things well in the end. Laura doesn't argue. She simply smiles and moves on. Later that night, Laura is jolted awake by a nightmare. A sudden noise pulls her fully awake. She steps onto her balcony and hears a splash. Looking down, she sees a woman floating in the water below. When Laura turns back, she notices a bloody handprint smeared across the glass divider. Shaken, Laura immediately alerts Carla and a mayday call is issued. Cigarette asks Laura who she saw in the water. Laura admits she only caught a glimpse, but believes it was the blonde woman from cabin 10, the same woman she ran into earlier. Carla begins checking every cabin, making sure all the guests are present. One by one, everyone is accounted for. The situation is soon reported to Richard, who comes down as Laura once again explains what she saw, including her encounter with the blonde woman in cabin 10. That's when the captain steps in and drops a surprising detail. No one is assigned to cabin 10. The guests scheduled to stay there canceled 2 days earlier. Laura insists something isn't right. She points out the blood on the glass, but it's gone. She mentions the cigarette she saw earlier and checks the trash bin, only to find it empty. Carla explains that the waistbands are emptied every 2 days. With no evidence and no missing guests, the captain calls off the search, leaving Laura frustrated and unsettled. Cabin 10 is sealed, and the incident is officially dismissed. The next day, Laura approaches Richard and asks to meet the crew. She explains that the blonde woman she saw might have been part of the staff. Richard agrees and has the crew assembled. Laura carefully looks through them, but none match the woman she remembers. Frustrated, she heads to the library and asks Anne if they can continue their conversation from the night before. Anne gently declines, explaining that her medication has left her exhausted and she needs to rest. Later, Laura vents to Ben, telling him that everyone on board now thinks she's imagining things. She insists she actually spoke to the blonde woman. Then, an idea hits her. If the woman was really on the yacht, she must have appeared in someone's photos. Laura grabs Ben's laptop and starts going through his pictures. Ben points out that some of the photos aren't from the yacht, but Laura keeps scrolling. Eventually, she finds the woman. Certain she's onto something, Laura takes the photo to Richard and insists this is the woman who stayed in cabin 10. Ben steps in to clarify that the photo was taken months earlier at one of Adam's parties. Adam and Richard both say they've never seen the woman before. Dr. Robert suggests that Laura may still be affected by recent trauma, referring to the informant from her NGO investigation who was killed after being forced underwater. The comment catches Laura off guard. She asks Robert how he knows about that incident. Ben quickly admits that Rowan had told him. Upset, Laura confronts Ben, asking why he would share something so personal. Ben says he was only worried about her. Trying to defuse the situation, Richard tells Laura he'll have people look into the woman from the photo. In the meantime, he suggests she take a break and arranges a spa session for her, hoping it will help her relax. After the spa, Laura returns to her cabin for a bath. She notices movement nearby, then spots the word "stop" written on her bathroom door. When she asks a crew member, she's told no one entered the room. Moments later, Laura questions Adam after he steps out of the sauna, but he denies being near the bathroom. Laura then notices a security camera nearby and asks the crew if she can review the footage. She's told the camera is turned off to protect guest privacy. Later, while showering, Laura spots strands of hair caught in the drain. Acting on instinct, Laura sneaks into cabin 10 through the window carrying a plastic bag. Inside, she checks the bathroom drain and finds a lock of hair. Convinced this proves she isn't imagining things, Laura rushes to Ben. She shows him the hair and reminds him that everyone claimed no one had ever stayed in that cabin. If this is the yacht's maiden voyage, then the question becomes obvious. Whose hair is this? Ben urges her to slow down. He asks her to wait 32 hours. If Sigrid still hasn't found the woman by then, he promises to go with her to file a formal complaint. In the meantime, he warns her not to upset the other guests. Laura carefully secures the hair as evidence. At lunch, Richard gives an emotional speech about Anne, becoming visibly overwhelmed as he speaks. Later, the group heads out for a whale-watching excursion. Laura uses the chance to quietly question members of the crew about the blonde woman, but each of them denies ever seeing her. She thanks them and walks away. As Laura heads back toward her cabin, Dr. Robert stops her. He pointedly asks why she's coming from the crew's staircase. Laura calmly replies that she wanted to explore the yacht. Robert advises her to enjoy the trip while it lasts, then walks away, leaving Laura uneasy. Back in her cabin, Laura checks her coat and is relieved to see the evidence still untouched. As she looks around, she notices a loose button on the floor. Suspicious, she adds it to the plastic bag with the hair and slips it into her coat. Later, while Laura is relaxing on the deck, everything changes in an instant. Someone suddenly shoves her into the pool and the cover is pulled over her. Trapped underwater, Laura struggles to stay alive until nearby guests finally notice and pull her out. Shaken, Laura tells Ben that someone tried to silence her. Her attention shifts when she notices a button missing from Dr. Robert's cuff. She then asks Sigrid about her coat and is told it's been sent to the laundry along with her other belongings. When she asks for the plastic bag, she's told there was no bag among her things. Ben joins her and Laura turns on him, accusing him of being involved. She reminds him that he was the only one who knew about the hair, meaning someone must have gone through her coat. Ben admits he told others about the evidence, claiming he did it to protect her since everyone believed she was unstable. Furious, Laura tells Ben to stay away from her. After the incident, Danny decides to leave the yacht to avoid any scandal, and soon enough, the blame quietly falls on Laura. That night, Laura hears a knock at her door. Through the small peephole, she catches a glimpse of a hoodie, the same one worn by the blonde woman from cabin 10. Laura follows her below deck and finally confronts her, demanding to know who she is and whether she was the one who pushed her into the pool. The woman denies it and coldly warns Laura to back off or she'll end up dead. Frustrated, Laura lunges at her. But the moment they struggle, Laura realizes the truth. The woman is Anne. Before Laura can react, Anne knocks her down and locks her inside a room. When Laura comes to, she tries the door, but it won't open. As she gathers her thoughts, everything starts to click. The blonde woman isn't Anne. She's been impersonating her. When the woman returns, Laura confronts her, pointing out details she couldn't possibly know, like Anne stopping her medication or the private meeting Anne had planned with her. Laura then voices her conclusion. The body thrown overboard that night wasn't the blonde woman. It was Anne. And because Anne was planning to cut Richard out of her will, he had her killed. The woman breaks down and admits she didn't know Richard intended to murder Anne. She explains that she was hired to impersonate Anne for a single day, just long enough to sign a new will. Richard wanted control of the foundation, so he could inherit everything once Anne was gone. She reveals that Richard found her through Facebook, using AI facial recognition to locate someone who closely resembled Anne. He even invited her to social events beforehand, slowly building familiarity so the switch wouldn't raise suspicion. That night, however, Anne caught them in the middle of the plan. A struggle broke out between her and Richard, and in the chaos, Richard slammed Anne's head against the table, killing her instantly, and then threw her body off the yacht. It was the same sound Laura heard that night. The woman admits she's ashamed of her role, but explains she only agreed because she was desperate. She's poor, has a daughter to care for, and felt she had no choice. When Laura asks her name, she finally says, "It's Carrie." Laura warns her that once the will is signed, Richard won't hesitate to get rid of her too. If either of them wants to survive, they'll need to work together. Carrie doesn't respond. Instead, she locks the door and walks away. Later, Ben tries to check on Laura, but Robert stops him, claiming Laura needs rest after what she's been through in the pool. Hours pass. Growing uneasy, Richard orders Robert to find Laura, and once he does, to make sure she doesn't become a problem. Robert hesitates. He says Anne was already dying, that what he did then was different. This, he argues, would be outright murder. Richard shuts him down, reminding him that he has proof of Robert overdosing Anne and could easily turn him in. Cornered, Robert reluctantly agrees. Around midnight, Carrie quietly returns to Laura. She tells her what she overheard. Laura urges her to go to the police, but Carrie says it's too late for that. She'd be arrested as an accomplice the moment she stepped forward. Laura warns Carrie that Richard won't let her walk away alive. Carrie brushes it off, saying she'll leave the door unlocked. Laura promises she'll keep her safe until the will is signed, but makes it clear. After that, Carrie will be in danger. On the final day, an announcement is made for everyone to board the boat heading to the gala venue. Ben stops by cabin 8, but Carrie tells him that Robert has given Laura a sedative. As the guests begin boarding, Ben decides not to go and stays behind, worried about Laura. Meanwhile, Laura manages to sneak out. She makes her way to the library and retrieves Anne's speech, then tries to call for help. Before she can escape, Robert catches her holding a syringe. Laura runs through the corridor as two men chase her, eventually getting cornered. Just in time, Ben steps in to help, but Robert stabs him in the neck with the syringe. Ben tells Laura to run. She hesitates, but Ben fights back and manages to choke Robert. Moments later, Ben collapses and dies. With no other choice, Laura jumps off the yacht and swims to the nearest shore, taking shelter in a small cabin nearby. Later, Robert informs Richard that Ben was killed while protecting Laura. He also mentions that Laura jumped into the water and likely won't survive the cold. Richard then orders Robert to deal with Carrie after the gala. At the event, Carrie goes through with signing the will, catching the lawyers off guard with her sudden change of heart. Not long after, Laura reaches the gala venue and is spotted by Cigarette. Laura tells her the truth, that Anne is dead and someone has been impersonating her. She explains that Anne was the woman thrown overboard that night, killed by Richard for trying to cut him out of the will. Laura then hands over the speech Anne had written. That evening, as Richard begins his speech, Laura suddenly interrupts and takes the microphone. Richard orders security to remove her, but Carrie steps in and tells them to let Laura speak. Laura explains that what she's about to read is the speech Anne had prepared for this night. As she reads it aloud, it becomes clear that Anne planned to transfer her fortune to the Lindstad Foundation to be managed by an independent trustee. Richard tries one last time to shut her down, but Carrie insists that Laura continue. Frustrated and cornered, Richard slips up and admits that the woman beside him is not the real Anne. Panic sets in. He pulls out a knife, uses Carrie as leverage, and heads for the speedboat. Laura follows, shouting for him to stop as he tries to escape. From a distance, Rygh opens fire and hits Richard in the shoulder. Panicking, Richard tightens his grip around Car's neck, ready to kill her. With no other choice, Laura steps in and strikes him with a metal rod, killing him instantly and saving Carrie. The police arrive soon after. Days later, Laura publishes her article, finally revealing the truth. Anne's wishes are honored, Richard's accomplices are arrested, and Ben's sacrifice doesn't go in vain. Laura keeps in touch with Carrie, and justice is finally served. And with that, friends, this story comes to an end. Tell us in the comments how you like the explanation. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.